It was the smell of freshly cut grass that hit me first when I walked through the door. It was a strange thing to notice, but everything about this moment felt off. The house wasn't mine, and yet, here I was, standing in the hallway, surrounded by strangers, each with a different look of surprise painted on their faces. I'd been to countless parties in my life, but this one was different. It wasn't the kind of place where friends and familiar faces gathered. This wasn't the kind of party where you'd expect your spouse to be. I had been invited, but not in the way you'd expect. My wife, Kira, had sent me a text earlier that day, a casual message with an address, no explanation. Surprise. Just come, it read. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. Kira had always been the adventurous type, the one who liked to keep me on my toes, always making spontaneous plans without ever telling me the full story. But as I stood in the doorway of this unfamiliar house, my pulse quickening and a strange sense of dread building in my chest, I realized something. Kira had never sent me a message like that before. I'm not sure why, but the way those words hung in the air now made me feel like I had just stepped into the wrong chapter of my life. I had no reason to suspect anything, nothing concrete, anyway. We had been together for 6 years. No huge red flags. Sure, she'd been working late a bit more often, and yes, I caught her texting late into the night a few times, but that was it. Nothing that would suggest she was doing anything out of line. But this felt different. The house, the address, the strange vibe in the air. The door creaked open as I stepped inside, and I was immediately hit with a cacophony of laughter, music, and clinking glasses. The kind of sound that fills the air when a group of people is trying a little too hard to seem cheerful. There was a moment of quiet when everyone in the room turned to look at me, but I quickly passed it off as nothing more than a natural response to a new arrival. Then I saw Kira. She was standing near the center of the room, laughing, her eyes bright and sparkling with excitement. It was the kind of laugh that would have filled the room with joy if the situation had been different. She was talking to a group of people, all with drinks in hand, yet her smile didn't quite match the energy in her eyes. She looked almost nervous. It wasn't just the way she looked at me when she saw me standing in the doorway that sent a cold chill through my spine. It was the way everyone else looked at me too. The way their eyes darted away from me, and then immediately back at Kira. The way a few people exchanged quick, nervous glances as if they were all part of something I wasn't supposed to know. My mind raced as I made my way through the room toward her. I felt like a stranger, an outsider in a place I shouldn't have been. A part of me wanted to turn around and leave, to walk away from whatever was happening here. But I pushed that thought aside, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. Kira, I said, my voice a little shaky. What is all this? You didn't tell me anything about. She turned toward me, a forced smile tugging at the corners of her lips. She was trying too hard, and I could tell that she was hiding something. Hey, she said a little too enthusiastically, her voice high-pitched. You made it. Surprise. Her hands clapped together, and she looked around, almost as if she was searching for something. I could see it in her eyes, the tension, the subtle panic that flickered just beneath the surface. I tried to keep my expression neutral, to mask the growing suspicion that was taking root inside me. But the more I watched her, the more the pieces of this puzzle began to fall into place. This wasn't just a party. There was something else happening here, something much bigger, something I wasn't invited to. Before I could say anything more, a man I didn't recognize stepped forward, placing a hand on Kira's shoulder. His touch lingered just a bit too long, and the way she didn't immediately shrug him off made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. He was tall, well-built, with an easy smile and an air of familiarity about him, like someone who had been a part of Kira's life for much longer than I had known. I tried to ignore the gnawing feeling in my stomach as I watched him speak to her, his words low enough that I couldn't make them out, but the way Kira responded, laughing softly, leaning in just a little too close, told me everything I needed to know. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask who this guy was, but before I could, a voice from the crowd called out. Surprise! The voice shouted, a little too loud, and the room burst into laughter. But something about that laugh, that cheer, felt off, forced. It felt like everyone in the room knew something I didn't, and I had just walked in at the worst possible time. My pulse quickened as I stood there, frozen in place. My wife was in the middle of this crowd, laughing with a man I didn't know. while everyone else looked on as if this was all perfectly normal. I could feel the walls closing in around me. The air in the room grew thicker, and the laughter that had filled the space moments earlier now felt hollow. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand an explanation. But for some reason, I didn't. Instead, I stood there, waiting for her to turn around and tell me everything. To give me an explanation, anything that would make sense of the madness that was unfolding before my eyes. That's when she finally did it. She turned, looked at me with wide eyes, and whispered something to the man. And then, everything stopped. As soon as Kira whispered to the man, everything felt like it slowed down. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, each beat echoing louder in my ears. The room, which had been filled with the sounds of laughter and chatter just moments before, now felt eerily silent. People shifted uncomfortably, pretending not to notice me, but I could feel their eyes on me, sizing me up, measuring my every move. It was like I had suddenly become the outsider, the unwanted guest in a place where I wasn't supposed to be. The man's gaze shifted toward me as Kira muttered something else under her breath. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to hear them to understand what was happening. There was a clear tension in the air, a certain familiarity between them that made me feel like I had just walked into a scene from someone else's life. It was as if I didn't belong in this story, and yet, here I was, thrown into the middle of it. Kira, trying to recover from the awkwardness of the moment, smiled that same forced smile, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, babe, I didn't expect you to be here so soon." Her voice was too bright, too chipper, as if she was trying to cover something up, trying to make everything seem normal. But the more she spoke, the more I realized it was anything but normal. I took a step forward, my eyes locked on her, and then shifted to the man who was still standing far too close to her. "Who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though inside, I was a storm of confusion and anger. Kira hesitated for a fraction of a second, glancing at the man before quickly looking away. "Oh, this is Jake. He's an old friend from college. You know, just someone I ran into recently. We were just catching up." Her words felt rehearsed, as if she had said them 100 times before, trying to make them sound convincing. Jake. His name hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd never heard of him before. Never. If he was truly an old friend, why had Kira never mentioned him? Why hadn't he been part of our lives before now? And more importantly, why was he so comfortable standing this close to my wife, speaking to her like they had known each other forever? I tried to push the thoughts aside, but the more I looked at them, the more my mind screamed at me that something wasn't right. I took a deep breath and forced a smile, trying to hide the knot forming in my stomach. "Nice to meet you, Jake," I said, my voice sharp but controlled. He nodded with a casual smile, his eyes meeting mine for just a moment too long. There was something in his gaze, something cold, calculating. I couldn't quite place it, but I could tell he wasn't as innocent as he appeared. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and the way he leaned into Kira just a bit more made my blood boil. "You've got a great wife here," Jake said, his voice smooth as silk. He clapped Kira on the back, a little too hard for comfort, and I saw her stiffen under the contact. But she quickly recovered, brushing it off with a laugh, as if it was nothing. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and a part of me wanted to demand answers right then and there. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not in front of all these people. Instead, I took a step back, my eyes never leaving Kira's face. I needed to process everything, to understand what was happening before I did anything rash. As the night went on, I stayed quiet, watching them closely. The more I observed, the more I realized how much I had missed. Every touch between them, every smile, every laugh, it was all too familiar. Kira, the woman I thought I knew, seemed completely different. I had never seen her so animated, so alive. But it wasn't the kind of excitement I wanted to see in her. It was the kind of excitement that only comes from a hidden connection, from a secret that was never meant to be discovered. At one point, I noticed Kira and Jake slip out of the room together, their voices muffled by the laughter of the crowd. I told myself it was nothing. They were just going outside for a smoke or to get some fresh air. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The way they had walked off, almost in sync, told me everything I needed to know. Something was going on between them, and I had just walked into the middle of it. I spent the next hour trying to act normal, trying to pretend like I wasn't dying inside. But every time I glanced around the room, I saw the same thing. Whispers, quick glances, and nervous laughter. It was as if everyone here knew something I didn't. It was as if they were all in on a joke, one that I wasn't supposed to hear. And then it happened. Kira and Jake returned, their conversation abruptly stopping when they saw me. Kira's eyes darted toward the floor, and I could see the color drain from her face. It wasn't a reaction that made me feel better. If anything, it confirmed everything I had been suspecting. They were hiding something, and I was standing right in the middle of it, watching it unfold in real time. I stood there, frozen, my mind racing. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't ignore what was happening in front of me. But I didn't want to make a scene, not in front of all these people. So, I did the one thing that felt right in that moment. I stayed quiet, keeping my emotions in check. But inside, I was screaming. Inside, everything felt like it was falling apart. Kira tried to act normal, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided looking at me. I wanted to ask her what was going on, what the hell was happening between her and Jake, but I held back. I couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I would figure this out on my own. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. The night was far from over, and neither was the truth. As the evening stretched on, the tension in the room became almost unbearable. The laughter and the chatter around me felt like background noise, distant, muffled, as if I was in some kind of dream. I kept trying to shake the thought from my mind, but it was there, looming over everything. Kira and Jake. There was something between them. I could feel it in my bones. And what's worse, I could feel everyone else in the room sensing it too. It was as if they were all part of some secret that I wasn't allowed to know, but I couldn't figure out how or why they had kept it from me for so long. I watched as Kira made her rounds, laughing a little too loud, touching Jake a little too often, her eyes lingering just a little too long when their gazes met. Every time she did it, it was like a knife twisting in my gut. And what stung the most was that I was the last person to know, the one left in the dark, watching it all unfold right before my eyes. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted more than anyone in my life, was slipping away from me, and I didn't even know why. I excused myself from the crowd, retreating into a corner where the light was dimmer, hoping that I could clear my mind for a moment. But all I could do was replay the scene in my head over and over. The way Kira had looked when she first saw me, the forced smile, the way she had whispered to Jake, the way he had looked at me with that smug grin. I hated that look. It was the look of someone who knew something you didn't, someone who was far too comfortable in a world that you didn't belong in. I leaned against the wall, my arms crossed, my mind spinning in 1,000 different directions. I couldn't stay quiet forever. I had to know what was going on. I had to know who this Jake really was and why Kira had brought him into our lives like this. But how was I supposed to get answers without making a scene? How was I supposed to confront her when the entire room was watching? The door to the room creaked open, and I turned to see Kira step back inside, alone this time. She didn't see me at first, her eyes scanning the room for someone else. Jake, I assumed. But when she caught sight of me standing in the corner, her smile faltered, just for a second. That was enough. I knew then that everything I had been feeling was true. She was hiding something, and I was done pretending I didn't see it. I took a deep breath, pushing myself off the wall and walking toward her. As I approached, she looked at me, her face suddenly drained of all color. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she chewed nervously on her lower lip. She looked like she was about to bolt, like she was preparing to run. But I wouldn't let her. Not this time. Kira, I said, my voice low but firm. We need to talk. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking nervously around the room. But finally, she nodded and led me out into the hallway, away from the prying eyes of our so-called friends. The silence between us felt thick, oppressive. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, trying to make light of the situation, but it was clear from the way her voice cracked that she knew the conversation wasn't going to be easy. I'm not here to talk about ghosts, I replied, my tone sharp. I'm here to talk about Jake. Her eyes widened for just a second, and then she quickly looked away. Jake? What about him? I took a step closer to her, my voice lowering, but the words coming out with an intensity that surprised even me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. What's going on between you two, Kira? Why didn't you ever tell me about him? Kira froze, her back to the wall now, her arms crossed defensively, her lips pressed together, and for a moment, I thought she might stay silent. But then, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not what you think," she said, but there was a tremor in her voice that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I laughed, but it was bitter. "You've got to be kidding me. I've been watching you for hours, Kira. Watching you flirt with him, watching the way he touches you like he owns you. And now you're telling me it's not what I think. I'm not stupid." Her face flushed with a mix of guilt and frustration, and I could tell that this was the moment she had been dreading. The moment when everything would come crashing down. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out at first. Finally, she took a deep breath, her eyes locking with mine. Okay, I'll tell you everything, but you're not going to like it." I felt my pulse quicken. My mind raced with 1,000 different questions, but I was too afraid to ask them out loud. I didn't want to hear the answer, but I had to know. I had to hear it from her, no matter how much it hurt. "Kira," I said, my voice softer now, almost pleading. "Please, what's going on with you and Jake?" She looked at me for a long time, like she was weighing whether or not to tell me the truth. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the battle between what was right and what she had kept hidden for so long. Finally, she spoke, her words heavy with something I couldn't quite place. "Jake and we've been seeing each other for a few months now," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "It started as just talking, just being there for each other. But then, things got complicated. I didn't know how to stop it, and I didn't want to hurt you. But I did, didn't I? I've been lying to you for so long, and now you've caught me." I stood there, completely still, the weight of her words sinking in. My stomach churned, my hands trembling at my sides. She had been seeing him behind my back, lying to me, betraying me in the worst way possible. The world around me seemed to blur as I tried to process what she had just said. It felt like my entire life had just crumbled in an instant. I had trusted her. I had loved her. And now, she had shattered everything. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I turned away, feeling the sting of betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. And that was when I realized the night wasn't just a surprise for me. It was a revelation, a breaking point, and everything that had been building up to this moment was about to explode. I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. It was like a dream, a nightmare, that I couldn't wake up from. I had spent the last few hours watching Kira and Jake, noticing the little signs, the subtle touches and glances that told me there was something going on between them. But hearing it from her, hearing her admit it so plainly, felt like I had been sucker punched in the stomach. The room felt like it was closing in around me, the air heavy with disbelief. Kira had been seeing Jake for months, and I had been blind to it. How had I not seen it? How had I missed the signs? Was I that naive, that trusting? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. I had been the fool, the one left in the dark while they carried on behind my back. I turned away from her, pacing back and forth in the dimly lit hallway. I needed space to think, to breathe. My hands were shaking, my fists clenching and unclenching as I tried to make sense of what had just been revealed. Kira had betrayed me. And worse, she had done it for months, with someone I didn't even know. My stomach twisted with the weight of it, and for the first time that night, I felt the tears threaten to spill, but I fought them back. I couldn't let her see me break. "Kira," I said, my voice hoarse as I tried to choke back the emotion rising in my throat. "Why? Why him? Why Jake?" She was silent for a moment, and when I turned back to face her, I saw the guilt in her eyes. She had never looked so small, so vulnerable. It was almost as if the truth was weighing on her just as much as it was weighing on me. But then she spoke, and her words cut through me like a blade. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she began, her voice trembling. "It started so innocently. He was there for me when I needed someone. You were so busy with work, and I just felt so alone. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than just talking. But then, things just escalated, and I didn't know how to stop it." Her words were hollow, and I could hear the desperation in her voice. She was trying to justify her actions, trying to explain something that could never be explained away. She had crossed a line, and no matter how much she tried to rationalize it, there was no going back. "I trusted you, Kira," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I trusted you with everything I had. And you threw it all away." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw the woman I had once loved, the woman I thought I still loved, standing before me. But then the reality of the situation hit me. She wasn't the same person anymore. She was someone else. Someone who had betrayed me, who had lied to my face for months, and had done it all while I was standing right beside her, oblivious to the truth. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. "I swear I didn't. But I've been so lost. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to make things right again." I wanted to believe her. A part of me desperately wanted to believe that there was still a chance for us. But I couldn't. Not after everything I had seen tonight. Not after hearing the truth from her own lips. I had never felt more alone in my life. I took a step back, the weight of it all crashing down on me. My hands were clenched into fists at my sides, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't look at the woman who had once been my world, the woman who had now shattered everything I thought I knew about love and trust. "I don't know if I can do this, Kira," I said, my voice barely audible. "I don't know if I can look at you the same way again." For the first time since the moment I walked into that house, I saw Kira crumble. She broke down in front of me, her body shaking with sobs, her hands reaching out toward me as if begging for forgiveness. But I couldn't give it to her. Not right now. Not when everything had been ruined. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice filled with so much pain that it made my chest tighten. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to lose you." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The trust that we had built, the love that had once been so strong, had been shattered beyond repair. I had given her everything, my heart, my trust, my loyalty, and she had thrown it all away for someone else. I turned away from her, walking toward the door. I couldn't stay here, not in this house, not with the person who had torn my life apart. But as I reached for the door, I heard her call my name. "Please, don't go," she pleaded, her voice desperate. "I'll do anything to fix this. I love you. I swear I do. Please don't leave me." I stopped, my hand still on the door handle, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I had heard enough. The words she spoke were empty, meaningless. She had already made her choice. She had already chosen Jake. And now, it was my turn to choose myself. "I can't do this anymore, Kira," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart was breaking. "I need to walk away. I need to find myself again. I can't keep living in this lie." And with that, I walked out the door, leaving the woman I thought I knew behind me. The night air hit me like a cold slap to the face as I stepped out of the house and into the quiet street. My breath came in shallow gasps, the weight of everything I had just learned settling heavily on my chest. I tried to walk, but every step felt like it was dragging me deeper into the hole I didn't know existed until tonight. The betrayal was raw, the hurt fresh, and it was as if the world had shifted on its axis, and I was left standing in the wreckage of my own life. I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing in the darkness. I wasn't sure what I was doing, whether I was looking for someone to talk to, or if I was just trying to distract myself from the overwhelming rush of emotions. My mind raced with images of Kira and Jake, their whispered conversations, the touch of his hand on her shoulder, the way they had shared that smile, that connection I couldn't ignore. I felt sick just thinking about it. And the more I thought, the more the doubt crept in. How long had this been going on? How many times had I been blind to what was happening right in front of me? I scrolled through my contacts, stopping at a name that had been there for years, Tom. He was one of the few people I could count on, someone who had always been there for me, no questions asked. But even as I hovered over his name, a part of me hesitated. I wasn't sure if I wanted to talk to anyone about this. What could I possibly say? "Hey, my wife is cheating on me," and I just walked out of the house in a daze. No, that wasn't how I saw myself. That wasn't the man I had ever wanted to be. But the silence of the night seemed to press in on me, and I realized I couldn't bear to be alone with my thoughts any longer. I sent him a quick text. "I need to talk. Can you meet me?" Moments later, my phone buzzed. On my way. I didn't know how long I stood there, waiting in the street, my breath fogging up in the cool air. It felt like hours, but it was probably only a few minutes. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment, every look, every whisper that now took on a new meaning. I had been living a lie. Kira had been living a lie. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had? Tom arrived a few minutes later, pulling up beside me in his old, beat-up truck. The headlights cast long shadows across the empty street as he got out. his face set in a serious expression. Tom had always been the guy who spoke his mind, never sugarcoating anything. But tonight, his eyes were different. They were tired, worn down, as if he could already sense what had happened. "Dude," he said, walking up to me, "what's going on?" I didn't know where to start. The words were caught in my throat, heavy with the weight of everything I had just discovered. I wanted to scream, to yell, to throw everything I had into the air and watch it burn. But instead, I just stood there, my hands shaking as I tried to form the words. Finally, I looked up at him, my voice barely a whisper. "Kira's been seeing someone else. For months. It's been going on right under my nose, and I never saw it. I don't even know who I am anymore, Tom." He stood there for a moment, just looking at me, his face unreadable. But then, without a word, he stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, the gesture surprisingly comforting. "I'm sorry, man," he said softly. "I had no idea." "I didn't either," I replied, shaking my head. "I thought we were fine. I thought I could trust her, you know? I thought we had something real. But now I don't even know what's real anymore." Tom didn't say anything for a moment, just let the silence stretch between us. The weight of the words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could feel the tears threatening to spill again, but I pushed them back, locking them away. I couldn't cry. I couldn't let Kira see that weakness in me. Not after everything. "You know, sometimes the people you trust the most, they're the ones who hurt you the worst," Tom said quietly, his voice low, almost like he was talking to himself. "But that doesn't mean you're weak, man. It just means you got blindsided. And that sucks. But you've got to let it out. Don't hold it in." I nodded, but I didn't speak. What could I say? Nothing made sense anymore. The world I had built, the life I had been living, had crumbled in an instant. I didn't even recognize the person I had become. I was no longer the husband who had trusted his wife without question. I wasn't the man who had stood by her side through thick and thin. No, now I was the guy who had been deceived, the guy who had been played for a fool. Tom took a step back, looking at me with a kind of understanding that only someone who had seen the same pain could give. "I know it hurts, but you've got to think about what you want now. What's best for you?" "Best for me," I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "What's best for me is, I don't even know anymore. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way." Tom nodded. "That's fair. But you don't have to make any decisions right now. Take some time. Think it through. But don't let her make you forget who you are. Don't let her make you question your worth." I wanted to say something back, but the words didn't come. What was left to say? I had already left her. I had already walked out. But it didn't feel like a victory. It didn't feel like a triumph. It just felt like a heavy, empty void that I didn't know how to fill. "Thanks, Tom," I said, my voice breaking the silence. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." He shrugged, his face softening. "You don't have to thank me. We've got each other's backs. Always." I stood there for a long time after that, staring out into the darkened streets, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do next. The world had shifted beneath my feet, and now I had to rebuild everything from the ground up. But for the first time that night, I didn't feel completely alone. Maybe that was a small victory, after all. The days that followed felt like a blur. I wasn't sure what was real anymore or how I was supposed to move forward. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about Kira and the love we had built together, had been shattered in an instant. I found myself lost in the disorienting space between anger and numbness, each emotion gnawing at me in turn, pulling me in different directions. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and whenever I closed my eyes, I saw Kira's face, her expression of guilt, her tears, her desperate attempts to explain, but none of it made sense. How could I have missed it? How could she have lied to me for so long? I stayed with Tom for a few nights. He'd insisted on it, saying I needed space, needed to get away from the apartment, from everything that reminded me of her. The empty house, the silence, it was suffocating. But staying with him didn't help. Every moment felt like I was just running away from the problem. No matter how far I went, the truth was still waiting for me. It was still there, lodged in my mind like a splinter I couldn't get rid of. During the days, I tried to distract myself with work. I threw myself into it, answering emails, taking calls, just to keep my mind occupied. But no matter how busy I kept myself, Kira was always there, lingering in the back of my thoughts. I couldn't escape her. I couldn't escape what she had done. I knew I had to go back to the apartment. I couldn't keep avoiding it. But I didn't want to face her. The thought of seeing her, talking to her, it filled me with dread. What was I supposed to say? How could I look her in the eye after everything? But I knew it had to happen. I couldn't keep running away. I needed answers. I spent the morning stewing in my thoughts, pacing around Tom's place, the walls feeling too close, the air too thick. Around noon, I finally made the decision. I texted Kira, "We need to talk." I didn't expect a reply, but she responded almost immediately. When? The words seemed too simple, too direct, and it made my chest tighten. I wasn't ready for this. I told her I'd be at the apartment in an hour. I needed to get it over with. I grabbed my jacket, trying to steady my breathing. I hated how much it hurt, how much it still hurt even after everything had happened. How could I still care? How could I still want answers from the woman who had broken me? When I arrived at the apartment, I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me. The door opened slowly, and there she was, standing in the hallway, her eyes red-rimmed, her face drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept, like she hadn't eaten. For a moment, I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I stopped myself. She didn't deserve comfort. Not after everything. "I'm here," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. I wasn't sure if I was trying to reassure myself or her. Kira stepped aside, allowing me to enter, but there was an awkwardness in her movements, as if she wasn't sure how to act around me. She closed the door behind me, and for a moment, we both stood there, not knowing where to start. The apartment was eerily silent. The familiar smell of our home, the one I had once found so comforting, now felt cold and unfamiliar. It felt like a stranger's home, a place where memories had been tainted by betrayal. "I'm sorry, Aaron," she said, her voice small, almost breaking. "I didn't want any of this to happen. I swear, I never meant to hurt you." Her words sounded sincere, but they fell flat in the heavy silence between us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You didn't mean to hurt me? Kira, you've been lying to me for months. You've been with him, behind my back. How am I supposed to believe anything you say?" Her face crumpled as she stepped toward me, her eyes pleading. "Please, don't say it like that. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to understand, Aaron, it wasn't about you. It was about me. I was lost. I was so caught up in everything, and Jake, he was there when I needed someone. I didn't know how to stop it." Her words stung, but it wasn't the explanation I was looking for. It didn't make any of it better. I wasn't just hurt because she cheated on me. I was hurt because she had chosen him over me, over the life we had built together. And she hadn't even told me. She hadn't come to me, hadn't asked for help. She had kept it all inside. And now, she expected me to just understand? "You're right," I said, my voice low, tight with emotion. "It wasn't about me. It was about you. You wanted something else. You wanted something that wasn't me." I let out a sharp breath. "And I let you do that. I let you break me." Kira's face twisted with regret, her lips trembling as she tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. It was as if she was searching for the right words, the ones that would make everything better. But I wasn't sure there were any words left that could fix this. I wasn't sure I even wanted to hear them. "I know I've hurt you. I've hurt you more than I could ever explain, and I hate myself for it," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "But please, don't walk away from me. Don't leave me like this. I love you, Aaron. I've always loved you. I'm sorry for everything." Her words felt like a punch to the gut. The sincerity in her voice should have been enough to soften me, to make me rethink everything, but it wasn't. It wasn't enough. Not after what she had done. Not after how she had broken my trust, shattered it into a million pieces. I shook my head, stepping back, putting distance between us. "I don't know if I can believe you anymore. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." She reached out, her hand trembling, but I took another step back. "Please, Aaron," she begged. "I need you. I don't know what I'd do without you." But I couldn't hear it anymore. I couldn't take her pleading. Not when she had made her choice. Not when she had decided to betray me, to hurt me in the worst possible way. "I think you've made your choice already, Kira," I said, my voice cracking. "And so have I." I turned and walked out of the apartment, feeling like I was walking away from everything. From her. From us. From the life I had thought was mine. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew this. Whatever came next, I had to face it alone. The days after I left the apartment felt like an endless haze. Each morning blurred into the next, with no real sense of direction or purpose. I had gone from living a life where everything seemed set in stone, predictable, and safe, to one where I didn't know who I was anymore. I kept trying to fill the empty spaces in my day, but nothing worked. I still thought about Kira, about the life we had shared and the lies she had told me. I couldn't escape her. I couldn't escape the hurt. I tried to occupy myself with work, but even that felt like a distraction. My mind kept drifting, and the numbness wouldn't leave me. I spent hours walking around the city, lost in my own thoughts, trying to make sense of it all. But the answers never came. How could they? How could you make sense of something that had shattered everything you believed in? I had stopped answering Kira's texts and calls. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, not after everything that had happened. But that didn't stop her. Every day, there was a new message from her, each one more desperate than the last. "I'm sorry," they all started. "Please talk to me." I deleted them without reading them. There was nothing left to say. The trust had been broken beyond repair. Tom kept checking in on me, making sure I was okay, but I knew he could see the emptiness in my eyes. He could tell that I was barely holding it together. He invited me out a few times, trying to get me to go to bars or get some fresh air, but I wasn't in the mood. I didn't want to pretend everything was fine. I didn't want to pretend that I could move on just because time passed. Time didn't heal this kind of wound. Time only made the truth more unbearable. And then, just when I thought I was going to lose my mind, Kira showed up. It was a Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock at the door. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I hadn't expected anyone, certainly not her. But when I opened the door and saw her standing there, looking small and vulnerable, it took everything in me not to slam the door in her face. She looked like a woman who had been through a storm. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes red-rimmed, and her hands were trembling slightly. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't let her in immediately. I just stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do. It felt wrong to let her back into my life after everything that had happened. I had spent the last few days convincing myself that I was better off without her, that I deserved more than the lies and betrayal she had given me. But seeing her standing there, I realized just how hard it was to let go. "You need to leave, Kira," I said, my voice low, the words coming out slower than I wanted. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her. But part of me, some small part of me, was still clinging to the hope that she would explain, that she would somehow make it better. But she wasn't going anywhere. She stepped forward, her eyes pleading, her hands reaching out as if she were trying to bridge the gap between us, to fix everything with one touch. "Please, Aaron, just hear me out," she begged. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I'm asking for a chance to explain. I've made so many mistakes, and I've hurt you in ways I can't even put into words. But you have to know this wasn't about you. It wasn't because I didn't love you. I've been lost, and I've been selfish, and I've hurt you beyond measure." I felt the familiar ache in my chest, the ache I had tried to bury, the one that had been there since I first discovered the truth. I wanted to hate her. I wanted to push her away and never look back. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I could do that. I wasn't sure I was strong enough to walk away from everything I had known, even though it had been broken into 1,000 pieces. "You don't get it, Kira," I said, finally letting the door open just a crack. "You don't get to just waltz back into my life because you feel guilty. You don't get to walk in here, tell me you're sorry, and think that will fix everything. It doesn't work like that." Her face faltered, her eyes welling with tears. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you right now. But I have to tell you the truth, Aaron. I can't live with myself if I don't. I never meant to hurt you. I lost myself. And I was so scared of losing you. I made the worst mistake of my life." I wanted to scream at her, to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much her betrayal had ripped me apart. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't find the words. Instead, I stepped back, giving her enough room to come inside, but I didn't invite her in. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was fine, or to listen to her explanations that didn't change what she had done. "Why now?" I asked, my voice quiet, almost resigned. "Why are you here now? After everything you've done, why come to me now? What do you want from me?" She stood there, her eyes locked on mine. For a moment, it felt like the world around us had disappeared, like it was just the two of us standing there, with everything between us hanging in the air, waiting for one of us to make a decision. "I don't know," she said softly, her voice trembling. I don't know what I want, but I do know that I can't go on living with this guilt. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't let this be the end between us. I don't want to lose you, Aaron. I've already lost so much, and I'm so sorry. I swear, I will do whatever it takes to make this right. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. All I could do was stand there, staring at her, trying to figure out if I could ever believe her again. For what felt like an eternity, we stood there in silence, the weight of everything hanging between us. I looked at Kira, at the woman who had betrayed me in ways I never thought possible, and I realized something. I didn't hate her. Not entirely. The anger was still there, yes, but beneath it all was something else, something I hadn't expected to find. Love. I still loved her. I loved the woman I had married, the one who had stood by me through the good times and the bad, the one who had been my best friend before all of this had started. But love alone wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to heal the hurt, to erase the lies, to fix what had been broken. I knew that. I knew that forgiveness wasn't something that could be given lightly, not after everything we had been through. It would take time. It would take effort. But maybe, just maybe, we could rebuild something from the wreckage. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Kira, I began, my voice quieter than I expected. I don't know if I can just forgive and forget. I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again. But I'm willing to try. For us. For what we had. Her face softened, tears streaming down her cheeks. But there was a flicker of hope in her eyes now. It was the first time I had seen it. Real hope, not desperation. She took a small step forward, her hands reaching out tentatively toward me. I'll do anything, Aaron, she whispered. Anything to make it right. I nodded slowly, the words coming from somewhere deep inside of me. We'll take it one step at a time. We can't fix everything overnight. But we can start over. We can rebuild. Together. Kira nodded, her breath hitching in her throat as she wiped her tears away. I'm ready. I know it won't be easy, but I'll prove to you that I'm worth it. That we're worth it. There was still a long road ahead. The road to healing wouldn't be easy, and there were no guarantees. But standing there in that moment, I realized something that surprised me. Maybe, just maybe, we could make it work. We could rebuild our trust, piece by piece, day by day. We could learn to be who we were before, but this time, with a deeper understanding of what it really meant to love and trust each other. I reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin against mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. It was small, but it was there, and that was enough for now. We'll take it slow, I said softly, but we'll take it, together. Kira smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude, and I saw the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago, the woman who had made mistakes, but was willing to fight for us. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like we had a chance. Maybe not to go back to what we were, but to move forward into something new, something stronger, something real. As we stood there, hand in hand, I realized that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight together. And maybe that was enough.